You'll hear two university students planning a computer programming lesson. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Now listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Hi, Hardeep. Is now a good time for us to plan that computer programming lesson we've been assigned?
Hey, Don. I was just thinking about that, actually. Yes, let's get it out of the way now, shall we? I've got the instructions here. So, it says, design a 45-minute lesson for a class of 16 teenagers where they learn how to write a simple computer program in BASIC.
Now, I know, of course, that BASIC is the computer language people used to use back in the 1980s when they wrote programs on microcomputers, but I'm not sure I feel very comfortable teaching anyone about it.
Well, I did a bit of research yesterday and found out quite a few things, so I think we'll be okay.
Great. So, what do you have in mind?
Well, I think we should presume that none of the kids will know anything about BASIC. So why don't we start with a short multiple-choice quiz? It could focus on things like what BASIC is, what the letters stand for, when people used it, things like that.
That sounds good. I guess it shouldn't take long. Just the first 5 minutes of the lesson, something like that. I don't think we should make the students do it on their own, though. That'd make it too much like a test. Shall we let them do it in twos so they can discuss their choices?
Yes, good idea. Then we'll go through the answers with them as a whole group.
Good. What next?
Well, I've had an idea for the program they could write. I'll tell you about that in a minute. I think the key thing is, though, that before they actually sit at their computers, and I think we should presume that they're doing this lesson in a computer room, they make a flow chart of what they want the program to do. That's usually the best way to start writing a program.
This flow chart will show all the different stages of the computer program, right?
Exactly. It's probably best if the teacher stands at the board and everyone works on that together.
Yes, otherwise they'll all come up with different flow charts and it'll get confusing.
Precisely. I imagine making the flow chart will take about 15 to 20 minutes.
Then they use that to write their computer program.
Well, actually, I think there's a stage before that. You see, the flow chart will be in English. They're going to need to be taught a few basic commands so they can write their computer program.
Now I'm getting out of my depth. What kind of thing would that be?
Well, for example, when you want text to appear on the screen, the command is print in capital letters, followed by the text you want to appear in double inverted commas.
Oh, yes. I think I've seen that before.
Right. So they'll need to be taught 5 or 6 commands before they use them to write their program.
Okay, so how shall we do that? With the teacher talking to the whole class again?
Well, we could, but it might be more fun to make it more like a competition, where there are a few teams competing against each other. Each team has maybe 4 or 5 people in it, and they have to do some kind of matching task. You know, they match the command print with to make text appear on the screen, something like that.
That sounds good. Teenagers love competing with each other.
Exactly. And then, for the final part of the lesson, they use their flowchart and the commands they've learned to produce the program. Let's presume, shall we, that there are 8 computers in the room, so that's 2 students for each computer.
That sounds reasonable. So, tell me more about your idea for the computer program they're going to write.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
Okay, so it's a very simple program. I've actually written it down here so we can go through it together.
Okay, so the first line says 10 CLS. What on earth does that mean?
Well, every line of a basic computer program starts with a number. They usually go up in tens, so the first line is 10, the second 20, and so on. And CLS is the command we use in BASIC to clear the screen.
Oh, I see. So that's just telling the computer to start with a blank screen.
Exactly. Then we move on to the next line. So this one says 20, print, guess a number between 1 and 10.
Right, I see. That appears on the screen. It's not that difficult, is it, when you get the hang of it? Let's see if I can work out the next one. 30, input I. Oh, not sure about that.
Well, all that's saying is that the person playing types in a number. Input is the basic command for type in, and I just means any number you like.
Oh, okay.
Then what happens next depends on what the number is. So we've got 40 if I is less than 1, or if I is greater than 10. Then print. Bad choice.
Right, so if they type, say, 0 or 11, that appears on the screen.
Exactly. And then this next line takes them back to where it asks them to type in a number between 1 and 10.
That's line 50. I see. And line 60 says, if I equals 6, then print. Correct. Ah, okay. So if they've typed 6, they've got it right.
And if they haven't typed 6, which is the next line, then try again comes up on the screen, and that takes them back to where they choose another number.
It's clever. Well done.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2. You are going to hear a travel agent discussing a holiday booking with 2 customers.
Look at questions 11 to 13.
Good morning. Can I help you?
Yes, good morning. We'd like to book a holiday for July, please.
Certainly. Where did you have in mind?
Oh, well, we haven't thought a lot about it, really. We'd just like to go somewhere hot, and it must be in July.
I see. Well, let's get the dates cleared up first, then we can see about availability. What part of July were you thinking of?
Oh, well, you see, we have slightly different holidays. I've got the whole month except for the last 5 days, so I could go from the 1st to the 26th. But my friend here doesn't start until the 7th, so I suppose it will have to be the middle 2 weeks, really.
Yes, but I've got to be back before the 23rd.
Okay. Now, let's find a destination.
Before the talk continues, look at questions 14 to 20. As you listen to the second part of the talk, answer the questions.
Any preferences? France? Italy?
Oh, not France. We went there last year and it was absolutely packed with teenagers, making noise and getting drunk all the time.
Yes, it was terrible. We definitely want somewhere quieter this year.
Well, of course, it depends more on the resort rather than the country. There are resorts in every country which cater for the family or the slightly older person. They're usually a shade more expensive, though, as you might expect.
Oh, well, we don't mind paying a bit more if it means more peace and quiet, do we?
Definitely not. It'll be well worth it.
All right, let's have a look at what we've got on the computer. July. Was it 10 or 14 nights you wanted?
Oh, the fortnight, please.
Right. Well, let's start with Italy. We've got 14 nights bed and breakfast in Sorrento for £345 from Manchester on the 14th. Or we've got...
No, wait a minute. That's no good for me. We wouldn't get back till the 28th, and I've got to be back at work before that.
Ah, yes. How about Sweden? 2 weeks, half board?
How much would that be?
That would be £540 from Manchester again.
Well, 540... that seems too much.
Well, madam, there's a surcharge for the airport and it has a 5-star hotel.
Oh, well, it's a bit over our budget, really.
All right, let's try somewhere else. How about Portugal?
Oh, that sounds great. We've never been there before, have we?
Let's see now. We've got 14 nights in Albufeira, half board, from Gatwick, for £385.
Albufeira? Oh, wait a minute. Did you say the flight was from London?
That's right, from Gatwick.
Oh, well, we'd prefer a flight from the north somewhere. Manchester, perhaps, or even Glasgow.
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You'll hear 2 students discussing a survey they have to write as an assignment.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
How is your market research project going, George?
Very well, actually, Anna. I've just got the results of the survey back, and so now I have to draw some conclusions from the information I've collected.
That's good. I'm still writing my questionnaire. In fact, I'm starting to panic, as the project deadline is in 2 weeks, and I don't seem to be making any progress at all.
What is your topic?
Forms of transportation in the city. What about you?
I've been finding out people's attitudes to the amount of violence on television.
That's interesting. What do your results show?
Well, as I said, I haven't finished writing my conclusions yet, but it seems most people think there is a problem. Unfortunately, there is no real agreement on the action that needs to be taken. Nearly everyone surveyed said that there was too much violence on TV, A lot of people complain that American police serials and Chinese kung fu films are particularly violent. The main objection seems to be that although a lot of people get shot, stabbed, decapitated, and so on, films never show the consequences of this violence. Although people die and get horribly injured, nobody seems to suffer or live with the injuries. Any children watching might take the heroes of these programs as role models and copy their behavior.
So, what did most people suggest should be done?
A lot of people were concerned about how these films affect children. They are particularly worried that children will try to behave like the stars. The survey shows that violent programs should be broadcast after 10 p.m., when most children are already in bed. There is also a significant minority of people who feel that violent films should be banned altogether.
Or how did people feel about the violence on news broadcasts?
Most of the responses I have looked at have felt that violence on news broadcasts is more acceptable as it's real. Although it's unpleasant, it is important to keep in touch with reality. Still, many people thought that it would be better to restrict violent scenes to late viewing.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
Your survey sounds very good. How many people filled it in?
I gave out 120 and I got 70 back.
That's a very high rate of return. Who did you give your questionnaires to?
I gave a copy to every student in my hall of residence and a few to friends from other colleges.
Don't you think that this will influence your results?
How do you mean?
The people in your hall of residence are all about the same age. They're all students and from similar backgrounds. Therefore, it is likely that they will have similar opinions. Your results represent student opinion, not public opinion.
So how are you going to do your research?
Well, I'm going to interview my respondents in the shopping mall. What I'll do is ask people if they have 5 minutes to spare to answer a few questions. If they agree, I will ask them some multiple-choice questions and tick off their answers on my sheet.
Isn't it very difficult to ask meaningful questions using multiple choice?
Yes, it is. The secret to writing a successful survey is to write simple multiple-choice questions that target the information you're looking for. There. It's better to write a lot of short, specific questions than longer general ones.
So that's why it is taking you so long to write.
Yeah, but I hope I'll be ready to start interviewing at the weekend.
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
I'd like to talk about the changes to our leisure time, and I'll start by talking about lifestyle changes over recent years for women.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
I'd like to talk about the changes to our leisure time, and I'll start by talking about lifestyle changes over recent years for women. As we all know, the wife and mother of the family has traditionally been responsible for organising and completing household tasks for the family. However, particularly over the last decade or so, we have seen a greater number of women continuing to work after marriage and returning to work after having children. This has significantly reduced the amount of time available for household chores. The result is that nowadays the majority of people own and regularly use products such as dishwashers or microwaves. The modern family often considers hours spent on cleaning and cooking as a waste of valuable time, and generally we are all interested in finding ways of reducing the number of hours we need to devote to such tasks. While washing machines have long been thought of as necessities by families, nowadays so too are microwaves and dishwashers. These goods can drastically reduce the amount of time we need to spend running our home and increase the amount of time available not only to go to work, but also to spend on leisure pursuits. As society develops and we become richer, we put more value on our leisure time and our possessions. The richer a society, the more demanding it becomes. People are no longer happy to work long hours for little return. Expensive holidays, expensive clothes and cars all become more important the more materialistic the society in which we live. Acquiring things and joining the race of acquisition means that modern society spends a lot of time and money purchasing unnecessary goods. Although expensive and persuasive marketing techniques are partly responsible, the demand for such goods often comes from young professionals, those with the money to endlessly upgrade things simply because a better model is made available. Our obsession with the newest and best products available, while good for the economy, can also have a negative impact on the environment. It is not appropriate to overproduce appliances and overuse electricity to keep these unnecessary appliances operating in our homes. We often forget about the damage we have done to and continue to do to the environment. Others opposed to the overuse of appliances and technology also argue that from a social point of view, over-reliance on gadgets means that people are losing the ability to be creative. Traditionally, it was considered an enviable skill to prepare meals night after night for our families. Nowadays, women are more likely to gain approval from others for their success in their careers than their ability in the kitchen. Along with microwaves have come ready-cooked meals, pre-washed vegetables, and our reliance on takeaway food when we are too busy to cook it ourselves. While there are obvious advantages and disadvantages to our increasingly active buying behaviour and changing wants and desires, it is likely that our desire to purchase labour-saving items will continue. So it is therefore inevitable that production of such goods will increase. We can only hope to educate ourselves and our children to buy goods we need, not just goods that are available, and we must also consider their environmental impact. In short, moderation is the most important word for the future. I thank you very much for coming today and listening.
That is the end of part 4.